stylish. What?
Welcome back, my viewers and subscribers. You are watching Flowey's Adventures and I'm Flowey. Welcome back to the channel. Well, today I'm going to be bringing you another banger of a vlog. As you know, I'm in the beautiful country of South Africa. I'm in Western Cape and particularly in Cape Town. And I'm here in my hotel room getting ready to go out on the road. Where will I be going today? Of course, I'm wearing my Bob Marley t-shirt and it says, "Get up, stand up for your right." And I'm sure he was referring to people in this country where I'm at, because during those days when he sang the song, South Africa was under apartheid rule. And during that time, many of the persons who were at the forefront of fighting this system were imprisoned, and many of them were sent to different prisons across South Africa. And one of them, but not just him, was Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was tried, and he was sentenced, I think in 1964. He was actually sentenced to Robben Island, and he spent many years in Robben Island prison. So today I'm going to take you on a journey to Robben Island, and we're going to learn together some of what took place on Robben Island. Hopefully we'll get to speak to prisoners who are imprisoned just like Nelson Mandela was in prison, and other persons. So we'll try to get some first-hand account as to what took place on Robben Island. So why don't you join me on the ride to Robben Island in Western Cape, Cape Town. I'm now in the cab on my way to the Robben Island. Alright, the gateway to go to Robben Island. And yes, so let me just show you part of South Africa. And I don't know if you can recognize those two giants that are on that building. So if you know who they are, you can just put it in the comments. I'm sure you guys know those two persons. They're well-known freedom fighters here in South Africa. So the taxi just dropped me off and I'm now walking to the ferry terminal to catch the ferry to Robben Island. So walk with me. Sculpture by Marco Oliver. There's no doubt that Cape Town is a rich city. You can see the affluence in the building, the architecture, the type of stores, and all of that. The only question is for me, who controls the wealth? So I've now arrived at the Nelson Mandela gateway to Robben Island, and I'm in the docks. I'm actually in the line waiting to get onto the ferry to go to Robben Island. It's a very long line, and many persons are waiting like myself to get onto that ferry. So let me do a 360 just to show you what's happening here. So, in another few minutes we should be on that ferry going to Robben Island. It's now boarding time for the ferry, and I have my ticket ready to go. So Robben Island, here I come. Now you see the light. You gotta stand up for your rights. So get up, stand up for your rights.
The life jackets is found by the cupboards under the big windows. It's clearly marked life jackets for the kids and the adults. So you
So I finally made it to Robben Island, South Africa. And we're coming off the ferry. What a historic journey this is for me. And to come so far from Jamaica all the way here to Robben Island. Yeah, so making my first steps onto terra firma in Robben Island. Now that I've arrived on Robben Island, we're gonna be going onto the tour bus. So this is the tour bus.
Mike, because I do something that is not officially a Robben Island narration. The idea is to give you a better understanding of apartheid. Apartheid on surface level looks like a system of random acts of cruelty. What apartheid actually is a very well thought out system of divide and conquer that is similar to what has taken place in locations right throughout the world. It is as old as time. It is creating the mentality of us and them and then turning the two against each other. Unfortunately, divide and conquer has been refined over the years that you'll find it does not just need to apply to two different groups. You can apply it to multiple. The way they did it in South Africa is the fourth understanding that if your oppressed people, your working class essentially, the people that will be your laborers, if you treat them equally in a negative manner, you give them a common enemy and you give them a reason to unite against you. Because basically they're many against the one. But you'll find are subdivided, now treated slightly differently on a descending scale. You create the illusion of classes between them. So they start fighting each other more than they fight the system itself. This is apartheid in a nutshell, giving you a working example. Hypothetically speaking, if I arrived at those prison gates in 1960, they would identify me as the racial category of colored. You'll find that essentially mixed descent or mixed heritage is the definition. What will come about, that is the last box. What will come about is as a colored prisoner on the island, my uniform will be a long sleeve shirt, long pants, and shoes. The strange difference is if the next prisoner is designated as black, the uniform is now short sleeve shirts, short pants, and no shoes. Logically, there's no need for the difference. Psychologically, you create an animosity between the two because you seem to favor one above the other. Unfortunately, this is the entire point of apartheid, but it goes much deeper than surface level. Apartheid is not random acts of cruelty. Again, it is a near science of understanding how human nature works. In order to change a nation into basically breaking them up into different groups, the baton and the bullet won't do so. Changing South African law won't do it on its own. Physical barriers won't work. You need to change the way a nation thinks. And unfortunately, to do that, you weaponize three things: the education system, the media, the mind of a child. Change the thinking of a single generation, and you change the norm of that society. They will not realize the abnormality of what they do because it is the norm to them. Unfortunately, in 1950, this is achieved. They pass a law into effect called the Group Areas Act. By its basic function, it rezones areas into different living areas for different racial categories. By South African law, you live in an area only surrounded by your own, or so-called own essentially. But the target is not the adults. The target is the next generation, because they grow up absent interaction with the other side. And the only thing they know about those people is what you officially teach them. So if the education system is filled with misinformation and mistruth, unfortunately, is the foundation of preconceived idea. If you cement it as fact by state-controlled radios and newspapers, what you actually have is a process of indoctrination from birth to adulthood to create a generation that suffers from prejudice. They will judge those people before they start speaking. But more importantly, they no longer listen to learn. They listen to confirm what they already believe. And they are generation one. They go on to become parents and then now unintentionally teach their children in the same light. Do that generation after generation, and you change the very way a society thinks. Something we have recently learned the hard way is the result, unfortunately, is apartheid does not affect you for a number of years. It affects you for a number of generations. Because 31 years after democracy, the apartheid laws are long dead and gone. But the mentality of apartheid still lives on in our beautiful nation today. Again, it will take generations to fix. Why do I take the time to explain this? Twofold. It is in the hopes of giving you a better understanding of the way South Africa looks right now and as you interact with it. But it is more directly to highlight the point that Robben Island is everything it was intended to be. It is the hellhole of apartheid. It was a place of death, it was a place of torture, of inhumanity and human cruelty. But what it was never was a part of the grand design of the system. Robben Island was a knee-jerk reaction that in 1960 an event took place that caught the attention of the world. They could no longer simply kill political leaders after something called the Sharpeville massacre took place. With the attention that had garnered, they realized the political leader's death will be the creation of a martyr. So they basically decide they need to take these leaders out of the equation. They banish them to Robben Island, and what they cannot do, time will. They will eventually die on this island in isolation, taking their influence with them. The apartheid government operate in arrogance in one way. They assume they will rule until the end of time. So they fail to realize you have effectively just taken your greatest adversaries as individuals, brought them to a central location, and now given them the combined belief you will never see the light of day again. I would truly like to say that the greatest binding essence amongst human beings is love. But the honest truth is, it is survival. People will naturally do things that they would not do in the outside world, such as collaboration, the sharing of resources, and communication to survive day to day. But this evolved beyond just mere survival. This became a true camaraderie on this island. These people learned to set their differences aside, not realizing they were shaping each other into becoming the future leaders that a nation would one day come to need. And I say need because in 1994, while we witnessed the birth of the new South Africa, we were threatened with civil war every other day in the early days of its creation itself. And it was not one person that kept it all together. One person could never have done so alone, but a collective of people could. And that collective of people came from Robben Island itself. As I take you around the island, if you have any questions, you may ask them freely. I am a very friendly person. I need to say that because unfortunately since birth I've had this face, and this face does not convey friendly. It just is what it is. Unfortunately I forget to smile. You find I am friendly on the inside, so if you have any questions, I will answer them to the best of my abilities. Other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy your talk.
Yes, I'm here on Robben Island. It's Robben, R-O-B-B-E-N, not Robin. It's Robben Island. Around. So there's a bird colony. So there's a penguin colony, a small penguin colony, but I'm not so sure that you'll be able to see the penguin. I'm gonna point the camera in the direction of the penguin. And of course I'm gonna take my picture.
What essentially comes about, you have these 32 individuals, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. The main driven need is not the materials they are taking out. They find a makeshift use for this materials. The point of the work is not productivity or profit. It is a form of punishment. Tire the body, tire the mind. But day after day, inside of that body, you'll find that they start developing that sense of camaraderie that I mentioned, born of desperation because of the isolation and the environment of the prison. There's a need for communication that begins to build. Inside of that area, there is no walls to separate them. And they find basically the release of that need itself. They start speaking to each other. The beautiful thing after the fact to realize was they didn't have the liberty of going to stand alongside their political comrades from the outside world. They spoke to whoever was closest to them. So out of necessity, they were crossing barriers that existed outside. And they did this over time till the point that the gods even stopped punishing them for communication. This was not a mercy on the part of the gods, it was a point of human nature. The gods used to use vicious physical means of punishment, but the gods eventually realized they are fighting against human nature. You find the prisoners keep on talking no matter what they do to them. And eventually over time, their superiors are going to take the point of view that the communication here cannot be stopped, which means the gods are inept in their duties. So the human reaction is to turn a blind eye and to no longer report communication is taking place, and you look competent in your duties. What will come about is the next 13 and a half years will yield conversations that is no longer one person to the next. It becomes group debates all the while the work continues. You find the physical exhaustion would be there, but what essentially would come about is you have a sharing of beliefs, concepts, and ideas, where the opinion of the lecturer is as important as the opinion of the laborer. And this mixture of concept and idea starts opening different people's minds to different possibilities. They start coming to ideas and conclusions that no one organization could have made on their own. But what it is preparing them for, they cannot realize its importance. Because in 1994, with the birth of the new South Africa, we would celebrate that new South Africa wholeheartedly. Mr. Mandela's inauguration as president was one of the most joyous events in recent history. But one thing honestly needs to be said. When the joy and euphoria of that inauguration died down, it was replaced with a sense of dread, because we realized the task ahead of us. You have two immovable forces. On the one hand, you have people who do not really want to give up power. On the other hand, you have people who have been hurt for generations, and the desire for vengeance is boiling to the surface. When the conflict begins to erupt between the two of them, it sparks larger conflicts coming from the history that we do. South Africa looks set or destined to head towards civil war. When the world looked at that basic breakdown, they said no one person, be they Mandela or not, will ever have the influence to calm that situation. Mr. Mandela was humble enough to accept that they had validity in their point of view, but he believed what one man cannot do alone, a collective of people can. And he called upon the very people he worked inside of that party with. They would join him in government and outside, but they would have one task before them: maintain peace and stability. Put out the fires where you see them. Mr. Mandela, for his part, would use every available opportunity and event to bring about unity in the country, including many things he's today remembered as a hero for. But if I'm quite honest, if I leave sugarcoating at the door, in 2025, the rugby team in South Africa, the Springboks, are seen as national heroes. You will see their jerseys being worn by people of different walks of life in different racial categories. But in 1995, when South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup, our reintroduction to the world at large, that was not the case. Rugby was seen as a white man's sport, and the Springboks was an emblem of the old South Africa. Older people on board might remember boycotting Springbok games throughout the world. So you'll find that when Mr. Mandela donned the rugby jersey of the rugby captain of that time, he was labeled as a sellout, as a political pariah. His own inner circle started distancing themselves from him, believing that his political career was over. Mr. Mandela persevered and he publicly put his support behind that team. And against the odds, as that team made it through section and section of that tournament, you'll find they started garnering grass level root support. People of different walks of life got behind them. And by the time the final was reached, there was a patriotic fever burning throughout South Africa. When the final whistle blew and South Africa beat New Zealand in that final and were crowned the Rugby World Champions, an unscripted, unprecedented event took place. I was 9 years of age, and I will remember that moment for the rest of my life. South Africans streamed out onto the streets of South Africa, and in joy and celebration, we celebrated in unity. And for a mere moment, we forgot what our history was up and until that point. It was a symbol of saying, this is what is possible when South Africa unites. Mr. Mandela would use many such events to bring about moments of unity during his rule. So much so that we can be forgiven for forgetting he only served one term in office, 5 years. When his 5 years was done, he retired from politics completely. No amount of calls, no amount of requests would bring him back into the fold. He stepped back completely. But this is not a story of a person who had retired because he thought that he deserved it or he was old and he was tired. It was a conscious decision not made by one individual, but made by a collective. Because that very same collective who had helped him maintain stability, most of them retired with him. And they followed the same course. They stayed out of politics. Because inside of that quarry, they made a realization that filled them with hope and dread in equal measure. They realized that South Africa's system of apartheid is not the first oppressive system in history. Many such systems have occurred, but just as often as those systems are overthrown, the liberator today becomes the dictator tomorrow. And they realize the thin line between the two is the retention of power. You don't know when it's time to let go. So they made a vow, and this was in honor, you'll find, to say this of them. They made this vow at a time where they had no power and no future prospects of being released. That if ever given the opportunity, they would never allow South Africa to suffer the same fate. And to their credit, when that power was given to them, they honored their word and they stepped back. They basically prevented South Africa suffering the same fate that had befallen so many other nations in history. Many concepts, many ideas, and many changing decisions was made inside of that quarry. They might have been enacted in Parliament, but the concept was born over here. In a moment or two, I'm going to give you a further breakdown of the quarry itself, where you can actually see inside.
Robben Island prison, South Africa. Yes, my viewers and subscribers, I'm in the prison of Robben Island. Oh.
So much quiet is there's very few sites in South Africa that pays tribute or remembers the next subject. South Africa will remember many heroes, some more than others. But there's one name that even amongst the completely South African bus, I can garner just blank stares when I mention this man's name. The strange thing is the apartheid government never underestimated. They labeled him as public enemy number one. They kept him for 18 years in isolation, and they went so far as to change South African law to make sure that he was never released. You find they spared no expense to make sure that his isolation was complete, and they continued that till the day he died. The man in question influenced things around him and things for generations to come in ways he could never appear on. He was labeled as one of the most charismatic leaders of his generation. The man in question was a gentleman by the name of Robert Sobukwe. Robert Sobukwe was the co-founder of the Pan-Africanist Congress in 1959, a splinter group from the ANC, while Nelson Mandela and many others in the youth league went on to challenge the senior leadership of the ANC, seeming that they are too complacent and they were men are fighting back. Robert Sobukwe and a few others from the youth league broke away and they formed the Pan-Africanist Congress. Unfortunately, it created a political divide that would never heal. Robert Sobukwe in his own right would change South Africa for generations to come. After establishing the PAC, you'll find on March 21st of 1960, less than a year later, brought about one of the largest demonstrations of its time. But it wasn't just a demonstration or its science, it was its nature that scared the apartheid government. He called on people to openly defy South African law, peacefully hand themselves over to the West, and plead guilty to the charges presented against them. The simple philosophy or equation was there's more of us than there is prison cells to accommodate our number. The apartheid government took the simple point of view you cannot convince the average person to sit in a prison cell for 6 years. So you'll find they expected a few hundred people. They didn't take the demonstration seriously. The organization is less than a year old. So to their shock and dismay, tens of thousands gathered on that day and were fully willing to be arrested. They realized in shock that this is not a demonstration. This is the beginning of the defiance campaign. I'm going to ask my colleague just to move the bus very quickly because I noticed half of us are stuck in the silent bar. I'll continue in just a moment.
I sometimes like Peter Tosh more.
So you like Peter Tosh more?
Peter Tosh was more radical
Was more
than him.
radical.
Yeah,
Okay. Yes, he was
his
more radical.
messages
His message for real.
straightforward. Sometimes Bob Marley's
Well,
diplomatic
yes,
in
he's
how he put
very like
things.
Mandela. Yeah. What's your name again, brother?
Derek.
Derek, it was a
Yeah.
pleasure to meet you. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure to meet you. And thanks again
Yeah.
from the people of Jamaica. All right? Thanks. Love, my brother.
Yeah.
Great. One love.
Love from me too.
Yeah, man. All right. Take care. So, my viewers and subscribers, the tour to Robben Island has come to an end, and we're making our way to the ferry. So, it was touching. We learned from Derek, our guide, what life was like on this island for the prisoners, their diet, how their diet was based on their race, whether they're Indian, alright, or Bantus, people of color. They were given a different diet than the other persons who were like white, who were white. So yes, it was a very touching, alright, tour.